What do CEOs need to know about sales these days? A lot. Outdated sales strategies and tactics plague most companies today. Listen to what innovative CEOs and experts have to say about how to change all that with Sales Talk for CEOs. As CEO, if you had a magic wand to remove friction for your sales team, would you do it? Of course you would. In the buyer's journey today, there are so many points where we could really make it easier for people to buy from us, but we do need some tools. And one of those things, those tools that we need is case studies and success stories. We can never have enough of those. Now, I'm sure you're saying to yourself, oh, yeah, we have case studies. Yeah, we've got success stories, we've got testimonials. But do you really? Do you have current ones? Do you get them on a regular basis from your customers every time you have a success? But even a bigger question, are your salespeople using those during the sales process? During that buyer's journey, are they inserting those case studies, those successes in places that would make it easier for the buyer to make a decision to choose you? Well, if you're not, you're in the right place today because I have Julian Lumpkin here with me, who is going to share his story about how he grew his business of providing great case stories for companies. Welcome, Julian.
Alice, that was an incredible introduction. It is awesome to be here.
Hey, and what's so much fun is I was on your podcast earlier this week. So, a lot of fun together. All right. So, now in your own words, tell us about your company and what your company does.
Sure. So, SuccessKit creates case studies, which are sometimes called customer success stories for B2B companies. We do both written and video versions, different formats for your website, for social media, and of course, for your sales process.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so, the customer journey, of course, a lot of times starts before we ever even know it's starting, right? What do? They Google and they end up on our website. And if they see a case study or many case studies and successes, it gets them excited because they're like, wow, other companies like mine use this successfully. And I would love to do that too. And I think you and I were talking about this on your podcast as well. It's really all about your customers' success, not your success. Because if your customers are successful, of course you'll succeed. But when we focus on the customer success, we all do better. So I love that you are helping companies provide this in video, audio, written, many different ways. But before we get to your story, which I'm very anxious to share with everyone, I'm sure they're curious, like, how do you do it? How do you get these great case studies for them?
Well, we have different processes depending on the type of content. But what I always tell my clients as they start to work with us is I'm very honest that we don't have some magical way to position your companies. What we're really good at doing is not a totally neutral, but as a third party of just listening to your clients and documenting what they say. And it's very difficult if you're doing it yourself to kind of really listen to your clients and put it into their words and use their language. And that is essentially what makes our content great. That we don't make it about us. We take our clients' goals into consideration, but what it all always comes back to is how do your clients authentically talk about you when you're not in the room? And we document that for our clients.
Yeah, and a lot of sellers are finding that there's a lot of friction in the buying process these days, right? So people do want to buy, but they're a bit more cautious, maybe more skeptical. They really want to reduce their risk. And so sellers are working with them through their buyer's journey, right? And they get to a certain point sometimes and they could really use a good case study, something that matches something similar to what their current buyer's trying to do. And most times they don't have it. And it's really not that hard to get them. And it's even not that expensive to get them. But imagine if you had this beautiful library of case studies that salespeople could use at different points in that buyer journey to really help buyers make a good decision. That to me is just amazing. So I guess that you recognize that too. So take us back and tell us, how did you decide to start this company, and how did you do it?
Yeah, so I'm probably one of the very few marketing agency owners that never worked in marketing and never intended to. So I came at this from the sales side. I started my career in sales, and then I moved to sales management. And I was working for a VC-backed tech company in New York, managing the sales team. And there were about 16, excuse me, 16 different reps, and we were a great sales team, medium high ticket value. We were spending money on the best sales trainers, using Salesforce, hiring top-notch talent, doing so much to support our sales team. When I looked at the best sales reps on the team, they were very consistently doing something a little bit different than everyone else. And it wasn't just throwing a case study PDF at their prospects and thinking that's going to close deals. What they did is they learned all about our clients, not just the ones that they closed, but they met with the customer success team, they internalized them, they wrote them down. They really knew all of the examples of success. And our company, like most, we had, 5 or 6 case studies, but they learned dozens and dozens of examples of our customer success. And then during the sales process, what they were able to do is, as they were learning about their prospects, is share truly relevant examples. And I thought to myself, all of this effort we're making towards the sales team, all these things we're doing, scratching and clawing, trying to get every deal possible, the most important thing that we can do is just give our sales team the information of how our clients have succeeded. That was golden when used properly. So that's where I got the idea from, and I started looking for vendors that were helping with it or working on something similar, and there was really no one focused on this problem from this angle. So eventually, I decided to do it myself.
Yeah, the true story of an entrepreneur, right? There's a hole. I need to fill it. And I love that. And so you started, and it's a fairly simple process. It doesn't take a lot of overhead, right, to collect stories. And so that must have been kind of fun at the beginning. How did you get your first customer, and how did you grow from there?
Sure. It is worth noting that when I just started, the idea was a little bit different, where we were more focused on helping companies document simple customer success stories at scale, and then organizing them using technology and recommending stories in the client CRM. So we were a little more focused on a technology with a supporting service, where now we're essentially just doing the service. But to answer your question, my first client was actually my former boss at the company, because he saw the problem too. So it was great to have, one person, as I was before I even started, who was committed to working with us on this. And I think over the course of the first month or two working with him, I had 2 other people kind of from my direct network, who kind of saw the problem and maybe wanted to support me and saw what I was doing. So that's how I got my very first clients. The next 7 or 8 were a lot more challenging, and I didn't have a kind of marketing budget at the time. So I did, kind of the one thing I knew I could do well, which is I actually made cold calls to start. And that was challenging. It wasn't, I knew it wasn't the long-term strategy, but as an essentially free way to get my first 10 clients, it worked, and that's exactly how I did it.
Yeah, and cold calling is a lot tougher than 7 years ago when you started, but absolutely it does work, and you're proof of it, right? So you got your first couple of clients, which is awesome. And then you cold call and got 10 more. How did it grow from there? Were you starting to get referrals? Were you using your own case studies to attract people to you?
Yeah, so it took about a year to get to that point, and a lot of these early clients, we weren't doing great work at first. We are figuring it out and learning. So we didn't have those kind of clients, a whole bunch of clients that loved us yet. So we didn't have those case studies early on. After about the 1.5 year mark, we started to really hit our stride and serve our clients well. And that's where we started to, like you just mentioned, get referrals. But we're still small enough that even if each client gave us one referral early on, that wasn't really going to do it. So that helped. We did develop a couple of our own case studies at that period, but where we had to pivot, and I think the referrals became big later, but at this point the next stage was through some inexpensive paid advertising to get leads. And this was, LinkedIn ads were probably a quarter of the price that they are now at the time, but we ran, and it was when not as many companies were using the kind of automatic form fill feature on LinkedIn paid
Right,
advertisements, which is very
right.
common now. But we're pretty early on it, and we're able to get a lot of leads, pretty inexpensively, and the sales process was simple enough, that doing it myself wasn't very challenging, because I wasn't trying to sell them a $20,000 package for all their case studies. I was just trying to get them to let us try one case study for them and then build it from there. So the next step after the cold calling was to really build out LinkedIn advertising. And what we also started to do at that time, and it didn't pay dividends until later on, is develop content. So
Uh,
we made the decision to just not hide anything about our process for creating case studies, to just share it with the world, understanding that, yeah, a few people would read our content and replicate it and do it themselves. Great. Most people would read it or watch a video of me talking about it and be like, okay, let's just hire them. They know what they're doing. So I started that in kind of year two. It didn't pay dividends until year 3 and 4, but those were the things I was working on at the time.
Yeah, so you've done a lot of the right things, right, to get the sales going. You did founder-led sales in the very beginning. You went to your own network, which is super important. I can't stress that enough, and I don't know why people don't do it. They say, "Oh, those people can't buy from me sometimes." And I say, "Well, but they know people, right?" So always leverage your own network in some way. Always do that. And then you, of course, did the cold calling, and that, we all end up having to do some of that, some cold outreach, and it can work. And then you moved into the content, and you mentioned that it takes a couple of years for that to work, and that's absolutely true. But with LinkedIn today, it's so much easier to get your content out there more quickly. And then the paid ads, of course, which you mentioned, kind of got you the bridge between the cold calling and the content, using that. Putting all of that together, is that the strategy that helped you continue to grow, or where did you go from there?
Yeah, I think as we started to grow, we focused less on the paid advertising. LinkedIn just got way more expensive, and the content started to develop more organic leads. Additionally, like I think you asked about early, kind of going into year 3 and year 4, getting to about like 50 clients, this was also the point where one, we knew what we were doing. So now the vast majority of the people who worked with us were really happy, and we started to get referrals. And that became really probably not the most number of leads, but they would close, but led to the most number of sales because, if I have someone who inquires via LinkedIn ad, maybe they close at 30%. We found that when I had a referral, it closed at like 75%. So even just getting a couple of those a month was huge. And over the course of the next couple years, referrals became our biggest source of new clients.
And they should be, right? And for every company, I implore you, CEOs, if you don't have a formal referral strategy in place, a referral selling strategy in place at your company, please stop. Work with your sales leaders and get them to put a formal sales referral process in place, because you can get referrals coming into you, and you probably all do get some referrals flowing in. But how often? Once a week, once a month? Why not have them flowing in daily, right? As a great lead source, a great inbound lead source that really costs you nothing but doing a great job, right? Which you should do anyway. Successful customers absolutely will refer others to you, but they're not going to sit there and think about how to do that all day long. You have to prompt them, right? So you do have to ask, and salespeople need to be taught how to ask. So I applaud you, Julian, for setting up a referral strategy and working that, because that's absolutely the best. Now, I'm thinking about the people who use your products and services, right? You were in sales, and you designed this because you realized that sellers needed more help. They needed those case studies because it was best practice at your company. The sellers who did the best were using case studies. And you mentioned that they knew those stories. They knew them inside and out. So whether or not they had a video or a good looking slick or something on the website, they could tell those stories. And I think that's a really important thing. But the problem is, at most companies, nobody's collecting the stories for anyone to learn to be able to share. So tell us a little bit more about how you help your customers be successful with your product.
Yeah. So the biggest thing is one, just volume. If you only have 4 or 5 stories, everyone may be able to learn them, but it's not going to enable you to sell in the way that we're talking about. So the biggest and most important thing that we do is help get them to the appropriate volume of case studies. Now, once you hit that volume of, let's say, 20 case studies, then it becomes very important. It's not enough to just have them all in a page, in a single page, and or in a single folder for your sales reps. They need to know the stories. They need to spend time learning them. So we encourage people, when you're onboarding a new sales rep, one of the first things and one of the main things they should be doing is reading and learning all of your case studies, because it's going to
Yeah.
teach you how your clients talk about it. So we always encourage our clients to do that. But then you get to a point where, to really get it to the next level of using them in sales, they need to be categorized and organized appropriately. And that means different things for different companies. The most simple version of it is a client, that sells to 3 different verticals. And then you've got, your case studies for this vertical, case study for this vertical, case study for this vertical. And then maybe you have different personas you sell to. You sell, sometimes you're selling through the operations department, sometimes you're selling through the uh, financial department and the CFO. You would want, the case studies then organized by vertical and then the persona that they connect with. To take it to an even deeper level, you can organize the case studies based on the most important problems or challenges or priorities from that client. So when people think about case studies, I think they overemphasize and think too much about the results and, save 20% or increased revenue 25%. We've all heard that all day, every day for the last 10 years. It doesn't get anyone's attention anymore. What gets prospects' attention and really connects them to a case study is seeing that the client that's being profiled had the same problem or challenge that they have now, because that's what they're thinking about. The prospect is thinking about their problem now. So if you can organize your case studies by the things, simple things like persona, industry, but then also have them organized by the most significant challenges and important uh, problems that were solved, your sales reps can really match the right case study with the person they're speaking with.
Absolutely. I always say the best case study starts with a problem. And I've seen so many bad case study, testimonial, customer success stories, whatever you want to call them, on video where it starts with no offense, a boring person saying, I'm Alice Hyman, and my company is Alice Hyman LLC, and we build bricks. And the bricks do these things, and blah, 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 blah. I'm already asleep, right? The best case studies I've ever seen are I was ripping my hair out. I had this problem. I asked so many people to help me solve it, and I couldn't figure it out. And then, right? So building a story arc using, Joseph Campbell's story arc and how to build a good story, just the way we do on Netflix and in the movies that are on the big screen, right? We have to build a story so people can lean into that story and recognize themselves. And so I think that it's really important with these case studies that, as you were saying, we build them and we can even cut them into smaller pieces and use that. This is really good for this vertical or this type of company, and this problem really speaks to this. And when it's all in a beautiful library like that, then the sellers know exactly what they need and when they need it. But I think, even more importantly, like you said, one or two is not enough. You need to build a library, but then your salespeople need to own those stories. It's not enough to just that they could throw out a video, send a slick sheet, point somebody to a link on the website. They need to own those stories. They need to know those stories, and they need to be able to repeat those stories, share those stories with feeling, and that is what really can make the difference there. And so I think that's something that you have recently started doing some webinars on how should sellers use case studies. And I love this as a promotional tool for you and a way to get the word out there. It's more great content. So tell us about that.
Well, I'll start by acknowledging that you were the one that inspired me to do it. So thank you for that.
You're
And
welcome.
yeah, I've focused my career on really 15 years now on two things: sales and case studies, and not much else. So I have really strong perspectives and specific things um, sales reps can do, whether it's using them as a prospecting tool, as a reason to reach out, and kind of going through some of the things we are just talking about taking a case study and building a list of prospects based on that case study. So that's kind of one approach. Is like, what is the most important problems to solve? How can I develop a list of others who are likely to have that problem, or even simpler, just this industry, this persona, and then reaching out. When it comes to using them in the sales process, you know, I think you've mentioned it, but something, every once a week or or so you hear someone on LinkedIn saying, oh, case studies are boring. You can't just, it's the old way of doing things of, sending someone a 2-page PDF case study and thinking that that's going to make them buy. And to an extent, they're right, because if you just send a case study with no context and expect the person to eagerly read the entire case study and then trust and buy from you, you're probably fooling yourself. Case studies need to be organized and available so the client doing their own research finds it and can find things that they're interested in, even if they don't read the whole thing. Seeing that they're there and just kind of seeing a full library of case studies and different stories is important. And then if you want them to really engage and read with them, it's the sales rep's job to integrate it into the sales process. So case studies are not just to be attached to your proposal and expected to be some magic wand that's going to make your prospect buy. The best practice for using case studies, it starts by just being a good sales rep, which means you are asking the right questions and learning what your prospect actually cares about. And if you're good at sales, that's what you're doing during your sales process. You're not just learning what your company thinks they should care about or what most people in the industry care about. You may want to have those things in the back of your mind. But in my experience, sales cycles, the mid-market B2B sales cycle, it very often comes down to unique specific things about the prospect. The prospect If you think about yourself when you're buying something, it's usually or very often like, "Oh, that sounds good, but will it really work for me? Because I have this specific thing and my company's different and we're unique in this and that way." And if you're a good sales rep, you're uncovering those things. And if you've got this all really done well together, and I've seen this in action, and it's what inspired me to start SuccessKit, is when you do that, you uncover what that person's real priority or concern is. And then you go to your library of case studies, whether that's digitally or in your mind, and think, oh, this person who worked with us 2.5 years ago, maybe a few things were different, but that's what they also were concerned about or they cared most about it. And then you talk to them and you make sure you understand it correctly and say, oh, that reminds me of this person, talk it through, and then share that case study. And that's where what you're doing is you're not just throwing case studies at your sales rep, you're building credibility, you're using real examples, and you're making your prospect trust you because you're selling in an authentic way. You're finding their challenges and proving that your company has actually solved that exact challenge already.
Yeah. CEOs, marketers, sales leaders, I hope you're listening, right? I know I know none of you have enough case studies. I know you don't. I also know you don't have them organized in a way that it's easy for sellers to get them, because I hear sellers telling me, "Oh, I'm looking all over. I know there was a case study somewhere. I'm looking all over the SharePoint for it, or I'm looking all over the G Drive for it," right? That one case study, or there's one on the website, maybe two. Oh, we got three on our website. Not enough, right? So I hope you're listening to how powerful this is for sellers and marketers. So from hello to I'm your loyal customer, we need those case studies with problem up front to and solutions also, to help people understand that we might be the best solution for them. All right, so you've got a lot of great content, it's obvious. You mentioned that you also do some cold outreach. You've got the referral thing going pretty well. Maybe you're still doing some paid advertising or SEO. But when we talked, you also said you weren't growing at the pace that you really felt you could be growing at. And we had, quite a bit of discussion around that. But let's talk about that and share with the audience what you think your biggest challenges have been in really getting the growth where you want it, and what are some of the things that you're planning to do?
Yeah, happy to chat about it. And I think there's some great parts about the company, and at the same time, it hasn't grown as quickly as I would like. And I think there's sort of a trade off we made of staying very narrowly focused, which can sometimes make it harder to grow because even a good client only is spending so much money on case studies each year. But I don't regret that. And I think it was the right thing for a while. I think, you know, the first thing I'll bring up, going back to our conversation about referrals, I think, um, I think we got them very naturally and easily early on and set up a kind of very organized way to request them. Like when we finish a case study, we send them a reminder with the case study. Hey, by the way, here's our referral program, and that worked pretty well. But what we were missing, and well, I was missing because this is entirely my responsibility, was getting on the phone and asking clients for if they know anyone that could be a good fit live because um, you know, I think anyone in our who's become a client, if they hear someone who needs case studies, they're 100% of the time going to refer us, and that's gotten us some referrals. But what I was missing and what I stopped doing well enough is getting them to proactively think who in my network could really work with this company. And I think I made the mistake of relying on email and just kind of the formal referral program instead of the most powerful way of asking. So that's one of the main things I'm doing differently. And then we're also expanding our service offering. The big thing that we're doing now with a couple of our great clients is we're starting to build the website, the our client section of the website for them. So we're starting to expand service while staying true to doing what we do well, which is create this kind of customer proof driven content.
That's a great addition, and you think about it, so somebody says, "Yes, I need case studies, and I want video, and I want, written, I want all these different formats, but I don't know how to put it on my website, and my web builder doesn't really know how to do it either, or we have kind of an internal web builder." A lot of people don't have a professional web builder at their demand, right? So they have to go find someone now who can add this to their website, and especially have it be a library that's usable and sortable, not only for their customers but for the salespeople too, right? Because the salespeople can go to that same spot and put in the search words and come up with what they need, and that's the quickest way really to do it, because trying to house these things internally on SharePoint or G Drive is really hard. It makes it really hard to search. So I love that you are providing that for them. And I think that is definitely something that can help you grow. Now, you have been doing founder led sales the whole time, the all 7 years, or have you had a go at having a salesperson?
So I still have and I've had a couple different SDRs, so people who are helping me develop leads. But as far as the actual sales process, I've been doing that myself. Um, and the way that I see it, eventually that could change, but our sales process is very simple and easy. Because people don't need to spend hours and hours with us. We offer a one case study trial. So people don't need hours and hours of our time. It's a really simple sales process. So it doesn't get in the way of, I have enough time to do all of them. Where the real challenge is for us is developing enough leads, because a single sales rep could probably run 100 demos a month for us, which would turn us into a 8 or 9 figure company very quickly. Um, but getting it's sort of the case where if someone wants to meet with us to talk about their case studies, they're probably ready to try doing a case study with us. So our biggest challenge, and I've had 2 different SDRs and have one right now, is getting leads.
Yeah, I that's a common challenge that I hear every day. How do we do demand gen? How do we do lead gen? How do we get more leads? And in some cases, SDRs are working. It sounds like it might be a little bit. He's probably reaching out cold. But I wonder what would happen if you put your SDR also on getting referrals.
Hmm.
That's something you might want to consider. And if you could do the demand gen to, make it plausible to afford a full time salesperson, as well as, yourself continuing to sell, you really could grow a lot more quickly. So we should probably have some conversations around how you might want to do that. But I do
Definitely.
think it is sort of a catch 22. A lot of companies hire salespeople without that demand gen. They don't have a good process for inbound leads, and they don't have a process for outbound leads, really, other than just cold calling. For
Mhm.
example, they don't have case studies, they don't have content. Case studies are a type of content, right? But they don't have other content either. They don't have the SEO behind it. They don't have the presence, to drive the leads in. And so the salespeople aren't hitting their quota, not because they don't know how to sell, ding, 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 everybody, but because they don't have enough people to have a quality conversation with every day, right? If they had people who were interested in buying and could have 3, 4, 5 conversations with people like that every day, they would have plenty of sales. But we simply don't. We have sellers sitting around sending out emails, doing cold outreach, and not having conversations with humans. So, another plug for why you need case studies, because case studies do attract people to you. All right, so let's wind up with a couple of things. First of all, I want to know what's next for you. You mentioned a little bit, that you are going to change a few things, to increase your sales. And you've definitely added this new program where you can actually build out the library for them on their website, and I love that. What else do you see coming in the next 3 to 5 years that's gonna help your company grow?
Yeah, 3 to 5 years. I expect us to really grow significantly and be in a different place. I think things have gone slowly, but now we've really built up this kind of steady client base that likes us, and we have the right things in place, the right kind of profit margins where we can really invest and grow. So I see us. The way that I see it is the next couple years will be, I think previously we focused on one lead channel at a time, and that was kind of all of the time and money that was possible to put towards it. And now we've kind of developed a few different ones. And without doing anything drastically different, we can just push on all of them at once. And, going back to the paid ads, the SDR cold outreach, organic content, and the focus on referrals. And I think by focusing on all of those at once, we will be able to get to the next point. In the next, I'd say, year or two, hire a sales rep to help me run these sales processes and do things like develop referrals. And at the same time, continue to build out our product line, our service offering, while again staying very close to what we're doing now. So we don't want to become a regular marketing agency. We don't want to start saying, "Oh, we'll produce any type of content." We want to document what your clients say about working with you, but we wanted to start doing more with it. So our first big initiative, and could be the focus for the next year or two, is uh, helping them get it on their website. And I'm not sure what's beyond that, but I know that there'll be other things that we can help with, and while staying within the realm of case studies and video testimonials.
Well, and I also love your focus on helping your customers be successful by training their salespeople how to use the case studies once they have them. So I think that's an
Yes.
important piece too that's going to help you grow. All right, last thing as we finish up here, uh, tell the CEOs out there that are listening why it's so important to have these case studies. Maybe something miraculous that's happened for some companies who finally got case studies or things that sellers have told you like, "Oh my gosh, my life has changed because I have this." But just say a little bit about that and then how to get started. I mean, of course they can use you, but if they just want to do it on their own, how could they get started? And then I'll have you finish up with just telling everyone how they can find you.
Great. So I've heard from so many clients, and you can read our own case studies and video testimonials of people talking about how having case studies supports all parts of your business development or go to market strategy. And I think that's what makes them such a good piece of content to invest into. You do want new ones, but they tend to be evergreen. You can use them on your website in the to attract clients. You can use them during the sales process. You can use them sometimes in replace of reference calls. They can be used and repurposed into so many different things. You can take quotes out of them. So there may be one thing that jumps out at you as important, but if you're thinking about this, if you're on the fence of creating case studies or not, you really should do it, because you're going to find so many different areas you can use this one thing. And I'll also note that as myself as an entrepreneur, it's motivating for the team. It's exciting to have, internally, it's a win to see one of your clients going on record talking about the results you've helped for them. It is just a win across the board. And of course, we can help you with it, but you can do these yourself.
Yeah, and
Um,
you have some content on that, Julian, right?
yes,
So we'll share that in the show notes if you send us
sure.
the link for that. But yeah, just give them a few tips on how to get started doing it internally.
Yeah, if you're going to do it yourself, I would, of course, the first step is going to be identifying the right clients who are willing to participate. That's the number one thing. If you can have an outsider, help with either the writing or the interview, that's great. If not, you can do it yourself. Interview your clients. Take yourself out of the equation. Don't think about what you want it to say. Just ask your clients really simple questions about what they're struggling with before working with you, how you solved it, and the results that were achieved. Record that interview. Just keep an open mind and let the clients talk. And once you have that transcript, put it together, write it, have a third someone on the outside review it to make sure that it doesn't just kind of say your own messaging. That's the biggest mistake CEOs make, is they want to use all of their own language. I tell my clients, you may be able to describe things more precisely, but for your case studies, let the way your clients talk about it shine through. So just interview your clients, be open minded, and just ask them to describe what challenges they had and how you solve them. And again, keep it recorded, and the rest will go from there. And you're welcome to leverage our content. We produce blogs and videos about how to do this yourself. So you're welcome to leverage all of that.
And so where can they find all of that and
Yeah.
find you?
So the easiest way to find me is on LinkedIn, Julian Lumpkin. It's a pretty unique name, so you'll find me right away. And if you want to find our website, it's successkit.io. And if you go to resources and then blog, you'll see the different sections. And one of them is called Creating Case Studies. We have different guides. And if you have questions or just want some guidance, shoot me an email. I'm happy to help.
Wow, you have shared so much today, not only your own story, but so much great information about how people can use case studies. And I just can't say enough how important it is to make sure that you have a library of case studies for your sellers. I mean, just makes such a big difference. And really, not just for sellers. I focus on sales, so I always say that, but for marketers too. The marketers need the case studies. They can use them in their marketing messaging that they send out to people who have opted in. They can use them on social media to direct people to the site and have them watch those case studies. They can use them in lots of different ways, and so can the sellers. And so it's fantastic. Julian, I can't thank you enough for being on the show with me today.
The pleasure's all mine. Thank you for having me.
If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.